What's up, people? How you doing? Welcome to video two for week two. Um, I hope that you watched part one and now you're watching part two. I gave you a couple of days to watch part one, um, and now I'm here. It's Tuesday. I'm recording this and posting it on Tuesday, and you'll have the opportunity to watch it. If you haven't watched part one yet, you need to get on it. You need to giddy up on that and start watching it because the week's closing out. I mean, I know we have go days, but there's kind of a lot to do. So make sure that you watched part one, where I went over all the information. Sorry, my screen is getting really dark. I don't know why it's getting dark, but it's darkening. It looks like I'm just a floating head, floating hands. Uh, Hasty. Okay. Glow in the dark fires. Yeah. Okay. So let's get to it. Um, Things that we're doing are in the lesson two, week two folder. And so you should have already watched lecture part one. In that, I went over the what you're doing for essay one, and I told you about these short stories that you pick one to watch. Some are nonfiction, like that. That is nonfiction. It's a memoir. This is a short story, short story. This is nonfiction. This is part of a memoir. That's fiction. This is fiction. This is fiction. And this is fiction. So I do think that this lecture probably works better if you've already read one of those and you've already decided what lenses you are going to use to analyze the literature. Okay. So, for example, where are you going? Where have you been? You can interpret this story different ways. Okay. Um, where are you going? Where have you been? Which is a story about, I've already kind of mentioned it, story about a girl who's essentially being eventually duped to go with this guy who eventually is going to allegedly the idea is that maybe he's going to take her and sexually violate her and murder her because as I discussed before that when the Joyce Carol Oates read she read an article about a body of a girl found who had been sexually assaulted and murdered in broad daylight on a Sunday afternoon. And so she wrote the story kind of leading up to it. But just because like it's based on something that really happened doesn't mean that you have to interpret it that way, you know. So as I discussed through this, where I talked about having a critical lens and a symbol and a school of philosophy to a theme, like you don't have these do not have to correlate. You can have two different interpretations of the story. Um, so for critical lens and a symbol, you could say that after reading um, where you're going, where you've been, you could interpret that you want to apply a feminist analysis to the story, and you wanted to use the symbolism of Arnold Friend as being the representation of like the patriarchy. The Arnold Friend represents the symbolizes the objectification of women, and so you can do a feminist analysis about how the story it focuses on the threats that exist for women in society. Okay, So you'd say, all right, using a feminist lens, one could analyze Arnold Friend, the antagonist in the story, as being a symbol for the personification for all of the threats that wait for women out in the world. Okay. But then you could then say, when you get into talking about philosophical, the philosophy can differ, and the theme that you discuss can be different from the original interpretation. Because the great thing about stories is that you can interpret them in a multiplicity of ways. Okay, so you could say that at the same time that this story could be a feminist story, talking about the dangers that await women out in the world through the threat of patriarchy. Okay, you could also say that you could say, but we could also have a more broad interpretation of the story, and that the story really is about the fears of existing on this planet as an adult. And so you could do sort of an existentialist interpretation of the story and say how, existentialism deals with the fact that we are all alone. And in a sense, we are all Connies. Connie is a teenager on the precipice of being an adult. Okay. And so you could say that, like, and whether you want to do this like spiritually or atheistically or agnostically, whatever, but you can say essentially that like Connie represents humans on Earth, and her house represents this sort of like safe idea of religion, and security and God and all, and that in the world, existentially speaking, whether you're thinking about Kierkegaard, you research Kierkegaard, the Christian existentialist, or you research someone like Jean-Paul Sartre, who was an atheist existentialist. This idea is that like we have to that in the world we're actually on our own, and so Connie has all this fear about leaving her house, and Arnold Friend represents the existential threats that await all of us out in the world unprotected because we are just these individual particles going through life, and that can cause a lot of anxiety, and that we don't know necessarily what's waiting for us out there. Um, so, anyways, you can apply a philosophy to your story that differs from your analytical analysis of the story through a particular lens. Okay, which I think might be is good for because I know for me, I can see things different ways, and that's the cool thing about lenses is about ways of looking at the same piece of art, in this case, a short story, and looking at it from different angles to come up with different interpretations, because there is no absolute one interpretation. All right. So again, you don't have to. You might read a story one of these, and do see it from two different perspectives, and that's totally fine. And you can have one. You can use one lens and a symbol, and then you can have a different interpretation applying it to one of these philosophies. All right. But it is best that when you go into researching, which I'm about to demonstrate in preparation for your essay, that you have already picked a story that you read the story. Okay. Again, look, I'm like a floating hand, and I'm like a puppeteer. Um, that you've read the story, that you have thought about it, you've understood it to your best ability, and that you've decided how you are going to analyze it. All right, how you are going to interpret it. You should go ahead and figure out what lenses you want to use, and you want to use, and you want to figure out what philosophy you want to use. All right, and again, look, things like critical race theory, things like queer theory, things like feminist analysis. These stories, they don't have to have you can do a queer analysis of a story that has no openly gay characters, but that like you interpret it though as being a what we call an allegory of the experience being a blank person in society, being a homosexual male in society, being a lesbian in society, being a trans person in society. It's like a big metaphor, right? Even if the story never says anything about people of that orientation. Same thing with like you can interpret it as being a feminist story, even if it doesn't actually talk about women, female empowerment, or if it doesn't even have a woman in the story, but that like you can say, okay, well, this represents women and this represents the world against them. Same thing with critical race theory. Okay, your story might not even have people of color in it, but you can still interpret it as being an allegory for the Black experience. Okay, or what it says about Black people, or how the absence of color in the story reflects the way society treats people of color. Okay. So, you know, all these lenses, any of these lenses can be applied to any story. And um, you build and argue your interpretation of the story, which is totally cool. Okay. All right. So let's get through. And then I hope you enjoyed the. I know we didn't talk too much about the Childish Gambino because we're running out of time and stuff, but the whole thing is so symbolic. I mean, every single frame is like purposeful. So, um, okay, okay, research. Here we go. So part two. Now, ideally, we're entering part two with you having read a story and having decided on how you want to interpret it. Okay. If this was a full semester course, then part one lecture would have been a whole week. You would have had all week to read the stories. I would have actually had you read a couple of them and then pick one of them, but we don't have time for that. And so this right here is a whole nother. This would be a whole nother week where the next week I would then go over. You'd be have already read a story. You'd already decided what you want to how you're going to write about it, and then I would be going through the research process. Okay, so this works best if you already have a story in mind, and you already have a lens in mind, and you already have a philosophy in mind. Okay, so here we go. Performing research. This thing is like all in my way. All right. While this course covers literature, the focus of this class is actually about research. Okay. What I want you to take from this class when you move on through college is not necessarily the book that you read or the short stories that you read, which I hope that you remember or that you enjoyed. Okay. But it's the skills. And one of the skills is using research in your writing. When you write essays for a history class, they're probably gonna ask you for historical sources. So you need to understand how to research and how to pull quotes out and how to integrate them and make sure that they connect to your thesis or your claims. If you are taking any of your social science electives, everybody, regardless of major, if you're getting a 4-year degree, you'll have to, I think even a 2-year degree, you have to take a couple social sciences like sociology or psychology, I think philosophy falls into there also. But you are required to take some of these classes. And so, in those, you write papers, and those classes have expected that you've gone through 1102. Okay, 1102 is not just about English; it really does apply to any any class where you write an essay. All right, This is not 1102 is not an isolated course. It's one of the few classes in your college experience that is going to be depended on in your future classes. Okay. So like when you take math 1104, okay, which I'm not dissing math, but like unless you're a math major, um, that class, that information, the relevance of that class is not going to reappear or be useful in other classes outside of math. Okay. When you take when you take a history, your required history course, right? Outside of history classes, that information is not going to be required in your other classes. All right. And I'm not talking about your majors courses. Of course, if you're majoring in criminal science, all your criminal classes are going to, add up. But English, specifically English 1102, is one of the only classes where you call it cross curricular. It's information, the skills that we go over is not just relevant, but required to be known in many other classes of many different topics in areas because in college you do so much writing and researching and integrating quotes and using your supports to justify your claim and your interpretations and your analysis. Okay, so make sure that we take this seriously and that we don't underestimate the value of the research process because this is not just for my class. Okay, long-winded buyers. Let's go on. All right, so finding sources that support your claims, integrating sources into your paper, citing sources correctly and consistently. Academic writing needs to take the position of skepticism. All right. And so, which I mean, even your papers are skeptical because you can have two different interpretations. You can have a Marxist interpretation and a feminist interpretation. And when you offer a different interpretation within the same paper, that's kind of being skeptical. You're like, hey, I just read about how the story is a feminist story, but I'm even skeptical about that. It can also be considered a Marxist paper. Okay. Write as if your reader doubts every word. Therefore, sources add validation to your analysis. You're going to have four secondary sources required for essay one. A secondary source is essentially research, a source that you're using to justify your analysis of the primary source. The primary source is the short story that you've picked. Okay. So primary source is that which you are analyzing. For essay one, it's a short story. Essay two, it's a film. You're going to be watching and analyzing a film, a random film that you get to pick. Okay. We are for essay two for that unit. We're going to watch it. I'm going to require you to watch a film for the class as a whole, and then I want to talk about it. And then you pick your own film to watch. So your primary source for essay two will be a film. And then your primary sources for essay three will be the novel that you're currently reading and the adaptation of that novel. So you'll have two primary sources because your paper is on both of those sources. All right, both of those primary texts. Secondary sources are the research articles, the interviews, the things that you use to support your analysis of the primary source. Okay. So, primary source is the short story or novel or film that you're analyzing. Secondary sources, any supplemental research used to justify your analysis. Types of research for essay one, a source that discusses the critical lens you are applying to your analysis. A source that discusses the school of philosophy you are applying to your analysis. Two sources that are either directly about the short story you are analyzing or the author, or that is relatable to your analysis. Okay. Total secondary sources, four. So this week's assignment, what you're doing this week is called an, oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Hold on. Wait. Let me make sure. I have this fear that because I changed some things dealing with this class that mm, I modified the anti-bibliography. So I just want to check this out because I know we're doing it the outline. Let's go to calendar, course schedule. Okay. All right, good. So yes, we are doing annotated bibliography and the independent novel sign off. Okay. And an outline. All right, great. Okay. Okay. Um, so for the annotated bibliography, okay, for this assignment, you must find four sources that relate to the story you'll be researching. Okay. And amongst those sources, you need to be for the story, the critical lens, and the philosophy. The four sources found for this assignment will be the ones that you use in essay one. So do not take this assignment lightly because you will be utilizing these in your paper. All right. Look, every single assignment that I do have for you that I have for you to do for this class is building. It's all building for your essays. Okay. It's all deliberate. Like there is no busy work. There is no like, oh, just fill as you time in with this, right? In fact, this class had like a lot more assignments that the school just kind of like built in. And I just felt that those took away from the main things that you're the main objectives of the class. All right. Honestly, they were too literary. And while I love literature, I mean, I love I have majored in English. Okay. Um, this class, this is not a literature course. This is a writing class. Okay. And now in some colleges, they have English 1101, 1102 for English majors. And then they have English 1101, 1102 for all other majors. And the 1101 and 1102 classes that are for specifically English majors, yes, those are very literary because that's your major. But for the classes that are not English majors, um, then I make it much more focused on the writing. Which for some of you, maybe some of you are English majors, and you're like, damn, well, I would like to, be held accountable to a lot more reading. I get that, and so, but sorry. So with that in mind, this assignment, this annotated bibliography, is important that you don't see it as just busy work, but that it's intentional work. All right. Um, and it is leading you, is helping you prepare for essay one. All right. The four sources that you find this week are the what should be the same ones for your essay. You can change them. You can completely change all of your sources. I do not have enough time to compare your annotated bibliography to your essay to the final draft. I'm not going to hold them both up together and be like, oh, and check. Okay. I maybe if they were printed, I could do it easily, right? But on my computer, I'm not going to do all that. So you don't need to email me and ask me later on, oh, can I switch out one of my pieces of research? Because essentially, like you're taking on more work if you are going to have four pieces of research for this bibliography and then completely change those. Okay, so you need to have at least one source directly about the lens, Marxist, feminist, historical, psychoanalytical, etc., etc., etc. All right. So you need to do research on one of these lenses. One of the ones I've listed. I didn't list them all right here, but the ones previously. One source about the school of philosophy that you need to be able to you need to teach yourself. I did not provide enough information for you to understand any of those schools of philosophy. So you have to do your own research and teach yourself those things. And that's not laziness on my part, that's intentionality because so much, many of you are already adults. So I'm not trying to patronize you at all. Some of you might even be older than me, which used to when I was younger, that was possible. Now I'm getting older. Anyways, but but I'm just imagining the standard dual enrollment slash freshman person taking this class, around 18, 19, so much of the world out as you get become an adult and you are out there existing, so much of it requires self-educating, requires you to do your own research and to figure things out. So many jobs, they might have on-the-job training, but all at the same time, also, they don't teach you everything and you have to figure things out. So that college, a lot of our classes, we really do kind of like focus on that skill where we give you a little bit and then put it on you to find out more because that's just a very real life adult requirement. Two sources specifically on the story or that will be applied to the story. Okay. You won't always find sources about your actual story that you read, but you can find sources that you apply to your story, which I will demonstrate. For each source, you will provide the citation in MLA format and then provide a summary of the source information below citation, which I'll go over. And then your annotated bibliography will consist of 4 citations and 4 paragraphs, which I'm going to show you. Okay, examples of. This is called front loading. I'm telling you everything even before I've taught it. I'm alluding to some things I've taught, and then I'm also saying some things that I have not taught yet, and then I will show you, I'll demonstrate for you, okay, and provide you examples. All right. So what you turn in will be an MLA formatted page with 4 citations and 4 paragraphs. And if you do this correctly and you use all of these citations in your actual paper, then you will essentially almost already have your works cited page written, which is the required page that you have to have in your the end of your essay, which has the information on the sources that you used. Okay, this is essentially what you are creating for your bibliography, for your annotated bibliography. You have a quote here. You have your this is called the citation. We have this article by Michelle Fox. It says men have been promoted 3 times more than women during the pandemic. Study finds by CNBC. Okay, and then we have a short paragraph about it. Michelle Fox discusses how the COVID-19 pandemic has disproportionately impacted women in terms of career advancement. It highlights a study showing that during the pandemic, men were 3 times more likely to receive promotions than women. The reasons behind this gap include increased caregiving responsibilities for women due to school closures and the lack of flexible work arrangements. Additionally, the article suggests that unconscious bias may also play a role in perpetuating gender disparities in the workplace. It calls for organizations to implement policies that support gender equality and address the unique challenges faced by women during the pandemic. Okay, so this is a summary of what this article is about. All right. Now, on your outline, which we'll go over also in this same lecture, you'll go ahead and pull a quote from this article that you are going to use, that you would use in your essay if this was your source. Okay. So with the annotated bibliography, there's going to be 4 sources on the bibliography, and then those same sources will appear in your outline, which I'm going to go over, which is also due this week. That will show on your outline the direct quotes that you'll be using from each of your 4 sources and where they will appear in your essay. Okay. There's 2 assignments this week: the annotated bib and then the outline. But the annotated bib is going to be difficult and more difficult and harder to do. It's required to be done first before your outline. Your outline is going to be pretty easy. Once you've done your annotated bib, your outline is just going to be laying out where everything's going to go in order, essentially. Okay, where are you going to put which paragraph are of these sources going to appear, and then what direct quotes are you going to use from the sources? Okay. At least 2 of your sources need to come from the online library database. 2 of the 4, all right? Because that's kind of a requirement for the class that you know how to use the online library database. But not all of them have to, because you also will use plenty of Google research throughout your time here in college. And for the most of your life, you'll always be using Google research. People don't really go onto the online library database in their everyday lives, okay, to research things like mortgages and interest rates and all that other kind of stuff. So we will be doing some regular basic internet research as well. So those sources that you can use besides Galileo, which is the online library database, are these. Okay. News sources with the Associated Press. Any AP, the New York Times, Vulture, Atlantic, Slate. These are all national uh, and news sources that are vetted. And the Guardian's international, that's from England. They're all been the economists. These are all, they have editorial systems set up. Everything's really researched. Things are verified. Okay. They are considered to be reliable. Okay. So these you can use. Associated Press. So like you can find Associated Press is just a group of, they're almost considered like freelance writers, pretty much. Associated Press pulls together all of these journalists. And whenever a local newspaper needs additional, they need additional articles. So like let's say like the Michigan Gazelle, okay, some small newspaper in Michigan, they have maybe three staff writers where locally who write about local news, right? But they want to publish a newspaper, and so they don't have enough material from those three writers to fill out a whole newspaper. Then essentially they purchase articles from the Associated Press. Associated Press makes, has all these journalists who are writing articles that the newspapers from across the country can pull from and publish in their newspaper. Okay, and so like if I'm an Associated Press journalist, I will be told to cover the political information, news. I might write three articles a week, and the Associated Press pays me for those articles. But those three articles might not ever get published because it just depends if some newspaper around here needs an article on that specific political topic to then publish in their local newspaper. Now the Associated Press also has their own website where you can read all their articles. But if you pull an article from a local newspaper that's like online, it needs to have AP next to the person's name to demonstrate that like this is an Associated Press article. Okay, these can all be used. These can all be used in your paper. Okay. All right. So then, in consideration to non-specific or articles that maybe aren't that you, or let me rephrase this. There's sort of two different types of articles that you can find, whether that's on Galileo or on the internet. Okay. One is called supportive research. Research that directly supports your analysis because the author shares your perspective. So, for example, your topic is about how the main character in the yellow wallpaper becomes insane because of the setting. Okay. The great irony of the story is that her husband, a doctor, thinks that she is that she's depressed. And so he thinks the best way to solve that is by putting her in a room all day, keeping her safe from the anxieties of the world. But it turns out, though, that by being in that room, it actually drives her insane. When in fact, if she'd been out in the world, she wouldn't have gone insane. Okay. So let's say you do some research on Galileo, and you come across this article by Margaret Davison or Carol Margaret Davison, and it says a haunted house slash haunted heroine, female gothic closets in the yellow wallpaper. So this article is about the yellow wallpaper, and it's about how the setting drives her insane. Okay, and you found this quote in this article. The immediate and most disturbing implication is that she is infantilized in this former nursery. Okay, you want to use this quote in your essay. So this is supportive research because the quote is about the yellow wallpaper. The source is about the yellow wallpaper, and you are writing about the yellow wallpaper. Okay, so this supports your, it directly supports your research. Okay. Now, then there's also more like topical research, which is more like indirect research. Research that indirectly supports your analysis because you are applying the research to your analysis. So your topic again is about how the main character in the yellow wallpaper becomes insane because of the setting. So let's say you can't find or you found that one, but now you can't find two sources about the yellow wallpaper. So said you find this one. This is by Dr. Wang and other people, and it's called Social Isolation in Mental Health, a conceptual methodological review. So this article is not about the yellow wallpaper. It's psychology. This is a psychology research essay. But in it, you find that this quote: previous studies have identified an association between loneliness and depression, suicidal behavior, personality disorders, and psychosis. So those are, now there are ellipses here. Ellipses here because there are other behaviors that they found, but like I left those out because those do not apply to the yellow wallpaper. But these behaviors I included do apply to the yellow wallpaper. So I would use this quote in my essay to indirectly support the topic of isolation and mental health. And so then I would say, okay, just as Dr. Wang and his associates have found that there is an association between loneliness and depression, suicidal behavior, personality disorders, and psychosis, then this clearly supports why the Janine and the yellow goes insane by being isolated. Okay, I'm using this psychology research to support my interpretation of my short story. All right, so you can use this kind of research, and or you can also use supportive research. You might find specific research about your short story that you're reading, and then again, you might not about that actual story, but you do find research that supports your interpretation of the story. Okay. So then, in terms of library research, so you need to use one secondary source per body paragraph in your essay. All right, there's your introduction and your conclusion, but then there's your body paragraphs. I don't really want you to use quotes in your introduction, especially not secondary sources. Okay, I really want your secondary sources to be restrained to your body paragraphs. You can use biblioguides and Galileo for your research. So I'm going to demonstrate that for you here. Okay. So when you go to Galileo through the online library research, you can click on Galileo, and you can do your research there. Or again, you can find reliable web sources. Okay. So I often just use the literary research database, EBSCO. And then generally I will type in the story. You always want to start off first seeing if you can just find information about your actual primary topic, okay, your primary story. I then would sometimes do advanced search. It might do something like theme. So I'm looking specifically for theme analysis of this story. You could do your lens, feminists, feminism, Marxism, critical race theory, and see if anything pops up for those. And then when you are given your when you're given some options, some of the results, you need to read through them to see, just you can't just pick a random one because you might not find anything. Like the first one, flash fiction theory. I'm not writing about flash fiction, so I probably wouldn't find this helpful. But this one, though, Speed That Kills, the role of technology in Kate Chopin's to serve an hour. A critique is presented of the short story, focusing on her depiction of technology and themes of postmodernism and feminism in the story. Oh, okay, interesting. The technology part is not too interesting, but the idea of feminism is okay. So you can click on it and then read it. If you find a quote in it that you is useful for your paper that you want to use, then you need to get the citation information, which on the right hand side of the page when you pull it up, there is a icon for MLA work for citations, and then you just scroll down and you find MLA, which is what we're using, and then you can just copy it. Again, I'm going to demonstrate this for you as well. It's just an overview. Okay. And then you want to go ahead and pull up the quote that if you read through it and you're like, okay, this is the quote that I don't want to use my paper. You want to copy and paste this quote because you're going to be using it in your outline. It presents an allegory which applies existential initiation rites to the biblical seduction myth to represent every man's transition from the illusion of free will to the realization of externally determined fate. Cool. All right, researching philosophy or critical lens. Again, you can use research guides. I would click on English 1102 right here when you pull it up on the library website. You can go to Galileo. You can use what's called Bloom's literature for this is sort of like I don't want you using online dictionaries and encyclopedias, but you can use them found through Bloom's literature. And then you can type in the name of the critical lens that you want to research. And then you get a whole result. The first one might not be helpful. It could be helpful. It might not be. Look, there's 170. So you don't have to pick the first one that you came across. Okay. I was just being lazy and making this demonstration. All right. So pick one to read. If it is useful, then copy the citation. Again, it's in your annotated bibliography. So like I said, you click this, you read it, you liked it, you find a quote that you want to use, go to citation right here, click on that. It pops up, it's like MLA, and then you can copy it to then put it in your paper, in your annotated bibliography, and your outline. So for your annotated bibliography, you need at least two sources from the online database library. So make sure that you have a correct header for your paper, the correct date. That is not the correct date. You have a title, annotated bibliography. You have your last name and page numbers listed. I'm requiring MLA formatting. Make sure that there is no additional lines between any part of the assignment. Okay. You need to have your citation. I'm going to demonstrate. I'll show for you how to make sure it's called a hanging indent. The first line is total full from the left all the way to the right, and then any of the subsequent lines of the citation need to be indented. So it looks like this. It's called a hanging indent. This hangs over. The first line is one complete. It's not modified at all, but then the subsequent lines are. You have a paragraph where you are describing what this piece is about. You got to indent the paragraph, and then you have a nice summary of the source. Okay, you don't have a quote. You don't have quotes in your annotated bibliography. You save the quotes for the outline. Okay. Oh yeah. And then we have these workshops. All right. I think that I registered us. Oh no, no, you okay. So you need to go online and register for a library research workshop. Okay. And if I didn't post this link, I need to. The ones that are for 1102 are happening from June 11th through June 14th. These are online. It's not a requirement. There's no grade requirement, but might be very helpful for you for the class. Now, of course, it's not good for this week because this week we are the second through the seventh. But next week you could still sign up for one of these just for the sake of helping you through the course. So if you want more instruction on how to conduct research, sign up for one of the online workshops that the library offers throughout the summer. Okay. Okay. Now, besides Galileo, other appropriate sources. So you can use these because these have a rigorous editing process. All right. As I've gone over, news sources with Associated Press, the New York Times, Vulture, The Atlantic, Slate, The Guardian, Economist, Forbes, Medium, The Washington Times, Psychology Today, New York Magazine. Published books, things you get from the library. Okay. Maybe you get the book at the Essentials Cafe. These are fine. All right. These are fine. I used to be against Medium, but now I've been convinced it's cool. I guess I could add this verbally. Substack. Substack is good. A lot of people use Substack. If you're familiar with that, cool. If you're not familiar with it, don't worry about it. All right, things you cannot use. Wikipedia. You are not citing Wikipedia. Dictionary.com or any type of online dictionary. It does not count as a source if you're like the dictionary defines feminism as the following. No. Online encyclopedias with yeah. I know people are going to be tempted to use the philosophy encyclopedia online. Just go through Galileo, please. Okay. .com organizations, Fox News, CNN News. Okay. Don't use these. Now look, y'all. There's gonna be a quiz. The next quiz you're doing this week is covering these sources. It's all about I'm providing you a bunch of sources and saying things you can use and things you cannot use. Okay. And so there will be questions with there are sources from CNN, there's questions with sources from Fox News, and you better say, oh, can't use those, can't use those. All right. So I'm trying to be fair and balanced. Technically speaking, if I was, there is a way of deciding between what is reliable on Fox and CNN and what things are not. Okay. On your day-to-day life, I would stay away from any article that says analysis. All right, in your everyday life, you can get reliable information from Fox News if you're not reading an analysis. You're just reading a news report. Same thing with CNN. You can get reliable information from CNN as long as you're not reading an analysis. You are reading just a news report. Okay. Um, People will try to sneak in these random websites in their papers. Okay, and I'm telling you right now, if you're using an online resource that comes from anything else that's not listed here, I'm gonna take points off. Okay, I will take those points off. Okay, so all right, because they lack a rigorous editing process. All right. So let's say you find an article online, like the New Yorker, Okay. And you find a article about Joyce Carol Oates. And she said some really good stuff in it that you're like, man, I can totally use this when I'm analyzing her story. Where are you going? Where have you been? Okay. So with that, we use EasyBib, easybib.com. And EasyBib is, I think there's a link I'll put a link to EasyBib on our content page at the top. But it's a good website to use to create your citations for online sources. Okay, so you essentially go before you go to EasyBib, you highlight the URL for the article that you want to use. Okay, you go to EasyBib, it's just literally www.easybib.com. Click on Create Citations. Take the URL and put it in the um, you'll click on Website on EasyBib. You'll take the URL from the article and you will paste it into the box that says website, hit search, and then it's going to pop up. And then you click Cite, and then it's going to ask you to check all this information. What you need to do, you need to make sure that you have everything correct. That sometimes, listen, sometimes EasyBib does not find. I mean, EasyBib is I don't know if it's considered AI or if it's an algorithm. It doesn't always find the author's names, especially in Psychology Today articles. It has a terrible time locating the name of the authors. So sometimes for Psychology Today articles, it will have a blank. It will have the last name, first name blank. And if you don't catch that and you don't type in their names, then you will lose points. Okay. If I see a citation with no author name, I will go and look that up. And if I find the name on the webpage, then I will mark it, I'll take points off your paper. Okay. Because EasyBib is great because it puts all the information in the correct order. But you are responsible for making sure it has the correct information. Okay. Who cares if the information is in the right order if it's the wrong information? All right. So it's a good program to use. You type in whatever information it doesn't find and make sure it's all correct. You always need author's name, you need the article's title, and the website title. Okay. And if any of these things are missing, you need to go back and check the website to find it. I don't know why this is repeating. Okay. Yep. Okay. All right. And then it will generate the citation for you, and you will be able to then copy and paste it. Now, just so you know, in case you're ever doing this yourself, okay, I mean, back in my day, we just had a book. We had an MLA book, and we had to look at how citations were written, and then we had to find all that information ourselves and type it up. Okay, EasyBib kind of does it for you, but that does not mean it's correct. You always have to make sure that you follow these styles. If you have one author, then it's the author's last name, comma, first name, period, quote, the title of the story of the article, period, quote, and in italics, the title of the publication, period, URL, period, access date, meaning the date in which you found the information. Okay. So we have like Kate open, serve an hour, we have the title, okay, and then we have the URL, and then we have the access date. If there are two authors, first author's last name, then first name, and then the second author's first name and last name. So it'd be like Walsh, comma Joe, and Karen Cedric. It would not be Wash, comma Joe, and Cedric, comma Karen. Period. All right. Only the first entry is it backwards with the last name first. Okay. Then the second name is normal. When you have three or more, three to pivot number, all you have is the first author's last name and first name, and then after that you have ETALL. That means like, oh, oops, it should just be AL. Like look at it here. I gotta fix that. So you don't list all everybody's name. You just have Evans, comma Robert, comma AL, meaning and everybody else. Everybody else. All right. If you do not have an author's name, there's no author. No, there's no author at all. Okay, because you used some sort of encyclopedia or something. All right. Or sometimes with psychology today, sometimes there is no author. It might just say staff, or editors. Okay. You do not, if it does not have an actual human's name, you do not include it. Do not include it. So in this case, it would just be, quote, and the title of the story. All right. It's like literally you just start from the title of the story and move on. Okay. Existentialism, period. Britannica academic. You do not put like editors of Britannica academic, writers of this, staff. Nope. Staff, writers, editors, these are not specific individuals. If it doesn't have an individual's actual name, then don't include it. All of this stuff is going to be on this week's quiz. So I would highly recommend having this PDF up while taking the quiz. Okay. You only get one opportunity to take the quiz. So make sure that you have gone through all this and you have it up before you take the quiz. Examples of citations. So like Robert Evans. Here we go. Okay. Existentialism. Here we go. Now, because this is it's annoying. Because this is a PowerPoint, that got a little messed up. Okay. So once you finish, you'll be prompted to watch a free advertisement while it writes the citation for you on EasyBib. That's annoying, but it's free. Okay. You can copy and paste your annotations in your annotated bibliography and then write your paragraphs. Okay. The order needs to be in alphabetical by the author's last name. So your four sources on your annotated bib should be arranged based upon the first letter of the last name. So you might not plan on using this quote, a quote from Rachel Aviv's article, until the end of your essay or in paragraph 5 or 4, but it still comes first on your annotated bibliography and your works cited page because the first letter of the last name is A. First letter of Marie Diamond is D. So A comes before D, but D comes before, W and T's and M's. All right. It needs to be alphabetical order. Email me if you have any questions. Okay, that was a lot of information. So here we go. This week, annotated bib, independent novel sign-up form, outline for essay 1, quiz 3, citations. All right. Let me go over a lot of this stuff with you right now. I want to just be done. I'm like, you know what? This has been a damn long lecture. I'm done. But, I want to make sure there's no confusion about anything. Okay. All right. So we have the essays, 1 stories you got to read. Okay. We have my notes. Make sure you watch those. All right. Summer novel declaration. This is where you put what are you reading for this paper. Forrest Gump. Someone asked about that. Yes, Forrest Gump. Cool. Totally. Do it. All right. Open this up. And then you'd write Forrest Gump. Goodbye. Oh, no. You have to Google it. What is the book about? Well, it's about a guy who, hey, what it's about, if you've seen the movie already, which is fine. I mean, you can totally, I want you to read a book that you haven't read before, but it can be about a movie that you've already seen. Like we watched, or a series, like we just recently watched, like early at the end of last year, Presumed Innocent, which has Jake Gyllenhaal, which I didn't know was a remake of a movie with Harrison Ford in it, which is also an adaptation of the book called Presumed Innocent, which is about this lawyer who's having an affair with this other lawyer lady at his firm, but she ends up being murdered, and he becomes the primary suspect of her murder. I enjoyed the series, so I could, read the book. I haven't read the book yet, so I could read the book, Presumed Innocent. I could write my paper. I could choose to either write my paper about the Harrison Ford adaptation or the Jake Gyllenhaal one, whichever one, whatever. Okay. What about makes you want to read it? I could say for question 4, what makes me want to read it is because I watched the movie already, or I watched the miniseries, and I found it really interesting. And so now I want to see, I want to know what is the book like, because books are often different than the adaptations. All right. So the reason why you want to read it could just be because you've already seen the movie and you really enjoyed it, which is fine. Okay. If the book has been adapted into multiple films, like different versions, different interpretations, or series, pick which one. So Presumed Innocence was made into a movie with Harrison Ford in it, and a 5 or 6 episode miniseries with Jake Gyllenhaal. For question 5, would write about the one that I'm going to be writing about. So I have not seen the Harrison Ford movie. I enjoyed the Jake Gyllenhaal movie. So I would probably here, if I was doing Presumed Innocence, I would then say it was adapted into a 6 episode series starring Jake Gyllenhaal and I watched it on, I think I watched it on Apple. I would have to find out. Okay. So the specific one that you're going to be doing there. Okay. Like if you're doing like with Little Women, Little Women has been made. Oh my gosh, it's been made sometimes. There's a movie with my original was Susan Sarandon and Winona Ryder in it. There was a miniseries with the girl who's also in Stranger Things, but not Winona Ryder. She's the ice cream girl. She plays Joe in the miniseries. There's that one. There is the one that was made in the 2000s teens with Hermione in it. Okay. And Pew in it. That one. So there's like that I can think of top of my head 3 different adaptations of Little Women. So for was it adapted to a film or series, you would write about the specific adaptation that you are going to be discussing that you plan on talking about in your paper. I'm talking about the version from 2017 starring these people. Okay. So be specific, please. Okay. Quiz 3 citations. So let's say they want outline Dropbox. Okay, hold on. Let's see. Okay. So I'm gonna show you some with it. I'm gonna give you a little insight into this quiz 3 citations. Let's see if they give you one. All right. Which of the following citations written correctly? True or false? So you need to take this and compare it to what I presented in my PowerPoint notes and see if it's true or false. All right. A lot of these are it written correctly based upon what you see here. Okay. Which of the following sources are allowed to be used in a paper? Select all that apply. So you really need to be looking at the source of it, goodtherapy.org, therapy blog, The Guardian, Psychology Today. You need to go to the notes and figure out which one of these 3. It could be 1, it could be 2, it could be 3, it could be none of them. Oh, I already have the correct answer right there. Oh, damn it. Oh my God. Oops. You better get that one correct because I already have written on there the correct answer. Oh, geez. This is really going to show who watched this lecture or not, because I just kind of I just revealed to you some of the correct answers. What a dork. All right, so there you go. There's your gift. Hope you all do well on those. So have this lecture up while you're taking this quiz. And also, have your PowerPoint notes up. So for the ones that I did not reveal the answer to, you can make sure that you compare them to your notes to make sure that you pick the right answer. Okay. Okay, so anti-bibliography and the outline Dropbox. Okay, I have templates for you. Anti-bib assignment. I go over the same thing I already went over in the assignment. I mean, in the notes. The only problem with this example is because when writing these examples in this format, I can't indent. I can't indent these lines. The subsequent lines of your sources need to be indented. All right. So if yours looks exactly like this, you are going to lose points, which is why I provided for you a example doc. All right. This example doc has them formatted correctly. All right. I have on here, I think I have two. I have two, Aviv and Diamond. Of course, yours will need to have two more. Yours is required to have four. On my example, I only have two, okay? Because I just wanted to demonstrate for you the way it should look, the exact way it should look. This is already formatted. I have my last name, my page number. I have my names, my fake name. There's no additional lines between any. I don't have multiple lines between these citations. There should be no. People want to like finish a citation and then hit enter like 4 times and then start the next one. No, all of these have the same amount of lines between all of them. All right. I do not need any additional lines between any part of my citations. All right. So I have the citation and then I have a paragraph about that. I have a citation and then I have a summary of the article. This is exactly how yours should look. I provided for you this has more information. And this is the same information that I have posted up here. The only difference is that it has the correct formatting for my example. All right. So again, these are the sources that you can use for it. I will demonstrate in a moment this assignment. Okay. I'm just showing you where it is. You should complete this first, then do your outline. Which actually, I'm going to go ahead and download this because I'm going to do a I already have it on my computer. I don't know why I'm downloading it, but I'm downloading it anyways. Judge me, bro. Oh my god, my computer's gonna run out. All right, I have 24%. I gotta hurry up. I don't know why I just don't bring my charger in here. Probably because it's kind of like keeping me on time. Like, oh, dude, you're gonna run out of time. Your lecture should only be as long as your computer can last. Okay, then we have our outline. So the outline, I have a template. Here's the template that I'm gonna provide that has you putting out just information. This is just copy and pasting mostly, for the most part. Short story, title of the author there. A quote from the secondary source, one about the work. So you're going to pull from your anti-bibliography and pull quote outs that you want to use maybe in your introduction. Now, I did say I don't really want quotes in your introduction. Sometimes you can have one, okay, if it's done correctly. All right, that's one way to start off. Some of the critical lens that you want to use in your paper that you're going to be using, critical lens, feminism, symbol. What is the thing from the story that's going to be your symbol? Arnold, friend, school of philosophy, existentialism, thesis statement. Where You're Going to Been has a feminist can be interpreted through a feminist analysis by looking at Arnold Friend representing the patriarchy and threats that weight women out in the real world, comma, while at the same time, it also espouses a existential theme of presenting the fears that exist for anybody who is moving out into the world on their own. Boom. Thesis statement. Critical lens. You need to find a quote. Here you type a quote from your source two from your annotated bibliography. Okay, so this is your second source. Now again, listen. These are alphabetical. Your annotated bibliography is alphabetical. This is not how they appear necessarily in your outline. All right, you might want to use a quote from this source in your first paragraph. And you might want to use a quote from this source in your third paragraph. That's fine. Okay. You decide the order of your quotes. Okay. Because it's based upon the topic, the critical lens. So here I have an example. You should definitely pull up my example. So yeah, download original file, dude. There it is. So here's an example of my outline. Okay. I decided I want to use a quote from Robert Evans. I don't have to, but I decided to have one in my introduction. I have my title, my short story. I have my critical lens. I have my symbol. I have my school of philosophy. And then I have my thesis statement. And here I have explain the critical lens. I have a quote. Okay. Then I have a quote from my primary source. All of these quotes, all these things I have laid out in my outline is how I'm going to write my paper. Okay. All right. Let me just, my computer just darkened. I'm just going to pause this. I'll be right back. I'm going to get my charger. Okay, I'm back. So my outline, I lay out complete order my essay. Okay. And the most amount of work you have to do for this is thinking about what you want to discuss in each paragraph, which I have kind of laid it out for you. Like part two is going to be explain the critical lens. Well, if I'm using historical feminism, I found a quote from my source that's about that, and I put it here. And my outline already tells me essentially what I need to be saying in each paragraph. All right. So like I've already done the work for you to tell you what you need to talk about in each paragraph. All right. You don't have to change that. You don't change what you're going to be discussing in paragraph two. You're not changing what you're discussing in paragraph three. I have laid it out for you. You are just filling in by what quote am I using that explains my school of philosophy and who wrote it. What is what? How do I think the philosophy applies to the theme? Okay, I write the theme as in you do, and then which quote do I have from a secondary source that supports this theme? All right. So the outline, I did the hard part for you by figuring out specifically the order of things being discussed. Now, look, I did that on purpose. All right, because the more specific I am, the harder it is for people to use AI. People still use AI, and their papers do not flow the way that I have instructed that they need to be flowed. that they need to be flowed. And that tells me that either they used AI or they didn't pay any attention, which is a problem. Okay. Because the whole point of, to me, for the most part, college, even though I do believe in universal education and just being an intelligent person, right? But also it's because we need to have a good workforce. Okay. And a healthy workforce is a healthy economy as long as a crazy ass person isn't changing everything or screwing everything up. But for the most part, a healthy workforce is a healthy economy, which keeps prices at a nice place. Standard of living is good. All right. When we have for the most part economic equality. All right. And a big part of jobs is following directions. I have to follow directions from my administrators. My wife has to follow directions, even though she's a director. She has to follow the CEOs and all their directions. They have clients. They have to follow their clients' directions. My brother-in-law, who's a landscaper, he has his own little business. I mean, he dropped out of high school and he still has a very successful landscape company that he started. Right? He has, which is funny because he's like, I started my own business. He's because he didn't want to he didn't want to have a boss. He had an issue with authority, hence the dropping out of high school. Okay, but he's very determined, very hard headed. I mean, he's Irish. Okay, very hard headed, which I fully support. And but his clients are his bosses. I mean, that's the irony of it. Is that like if he doesn't do if he doesn't cut their grass or trim their hedges or install the sod or plant flowers the way that they want, then he doesn't get their work again. You know, essentially, if they stop using him, that's him being fired because he didn't follow their directions. If they tell him that they want diagonal lines and he doesn't do diagonal lines, they're not going to use him. Okay. And so following directions in all areas of life, for the most part, in the professional world, is important. So that's what we're doing here. I have laid out for you a very specific layout for your paper. Okay. I did this both for you, so it's clear about what you need to write about, and I do it for myself to hold you accountable to not use AI. Okay. So I mean, it's a win-win. It's a win-win, right? Okay. So that's your outline, which you should do after your annotated bibliography. All right. And those are the things that you are submitting. Now, I don't know where you find the library. I know for me on Blackboard, I go to institution page and I go to down here to library and Galileo. Okay. So let's say I have my annotated bibliography page. Okay. Let's say you're using this, you're gonna use mine, all right, as a template. That's fine. Let's say your name is uh, Angela Smith. No, not Smith. Angela Godwin. Then you put there, keep that there, keep that there. The due date is the 9th. So you change this to 9, change this, get 2025, okay. You double click up here, you replace my last name, which is not really my last name, but it's my fake last name with your last name. Okay. Right. And then now also before you start the annotated bibliography, you might want to do the outline first, or at least start the outline. I think then I post for you I did an outline template. So where was that? You little jerk. Outline. There it is. Okay, so Angela Godwin. Godwin. You might want to start with the outline because let's see my title. Okay, of the short story. My title is where where are you going? Where have you been? And again, I did a very deep analysis of this. I have a video of me doing going over this story. So if anybody wants that, email me and I'll send it to you. All right. So short story title by Joyce. Joyce from Stranger Things? Nope. Joyce Carol Oates. Oh, where's the J? Okay. Um, Critical lens. You don't have to have a quote from source one in your introduction. You can, or you don't have to. All right. It doesn't matter to me. Critical lens. So I am doing feminism. I'm doing Arnold friend equals the patriarchy. Pa patriarchy. Ha ha ha! I spelled it correctly. I'm doing existentialism. I've decided. Okay. All right. And then somewhere else I have to do my theme. So yeah, theme. But I guess we'll get to that later. All right. Now I know what I'm looking at. Feminism, where you've been, existentialism, these are my ideas. Okay, I go here. All right, I go to Galileo on staff. Okay. So so you can do here. Okay. Let's see. What's classic search? Marxism theory I did before. All right, let's see. Where are you going? Where have you been? Let's see what pops up. Got it. I like to click on full text because look at this, 22 million. Are you insane? Full text means I can actually read it. I don't have to request it. All right. I might go to advanced search. And then here, based upon my outline, I said that I was going to be doing feminism. Okay. Then maybe I'll do patriarchy. Oh, look at that. All right. Search. Got it. I don't need all I got. Shut up. So then I read some of these. Roxanne, gay, hunger, feminism. Okay, that doesn't necessarily help me out here. Where are you really from? No, 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 no. Okay. So if those none of these look right so far, so I don't like that. Maybe if I add quotation marks, and then I do advanced search again, and I do enjoy Carol Oates. I'm demonstrating this. You might be like, oh, this is so painful to watch. Holy God, shoot me in the head. I get that. But that's the way research is. Okay. Part of this, is you have to figure out how to get what you need. Okay. Full text. Okay. Oh, look at this. Okay. Reverence, rape, resistance, Joyce Carol Oates, and feminist film theory. Okay. Well, I know this is a short story. This is not film theory, but one could interpret that Connie eventually gets sexually assaulted, and the story is by Joyce Carol Oates. So this might be, relative, or relatable to what we are discussing. Okay. Access options. View full text at Gal. Yep. Um, here's the article. The abstract. Listen, y'all. Don't. Okay. Here we go. You can print it if you need to. Whatever. So this is a little description of what this is about. A critique of gender ideologies presented, focusing on the works of Joyce Carol Oates. Topics included Oates' argument against feminist myths concerning reverence, rape, and resistance, or the assumption that films can produce fulfillment. Okay, so you go through here and you find something. that if you feel like it has something to say about what you are wanting to write. It might not, and you have to go back and find something else. Okay. Let's see. Blah 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 blah. Okay, so let's just say this. Let's say I want to use this quote. All right. Okay, again, I got you, buddy. Let's just say I want to use this. At the same time that the woman presented as vulnerable to domination instigates the imagination of masculine power, her very vulnerability evokes. All right, so let's just say critical lens from secondary source two. Okay, I want to do feminism. This is my quote. All right, I want to use this quote. Let's just say vulnerability evokes fear of weakness. Let's just say. Let's just say. Okay. Then I'm gonna come up here, and the writer is Wesley. So that's my example. Okay, here. Source Wesley. Okay. All right. And then I should go ahead and put my below it. I'm gonna go ahead and put my citation so I keep track of that. Um, so here on this page, if I go up to cite, it's right here. So I'm just gonna copy this and I will put it in my outline. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and go to my annotated bibliography. Okay, this is the one I'm creating. And I'm going to put it here. And I'm going to, now I'm going to delete this paragraph that Mr. Byers wrote. And I'm going to write a summary of the article. Okay. Now, you go ahead and do all of them, and then you can copy and paste them and put them in order based upon last name. Okay. So you can do the annotated bib while you're also doing your outline, kind of at the same time. All right. You're finding you're going to your outline. You're looking at what kind of articles you need. Okay. I need an article at the School of Philosophy. I'll go find that. And then when I find it, I will go ahead and put that in my annotated bibliography, and I'll go ahead and write my summary of what that article is about. You kind of do hand in hand, hand in hand. Okay. All right. Now, again, you should try to find quotes that you want to use in your paper. Don't. I will take points off in your paper if I feel like your quotes suck. If I find a quote that's like, this doesn't really say anything, this is just some words, it needs to have context. Whatever quotes you use need to be saying something. Okay. They need to have some substance to them. Okay. Um, it can't be something that is just generic or not substantial. All right. So I know this lecture is carrying on, so I'm going to stop. I just want to demonstrate that like your annotated bib and your outline go hand in hand. Okay. And that you need to follow the outline, insert your quotes into the outline because you are going to use that outline to write your paper. It's going to be the basis of your paper. All right. You are laying everything out. When it comes to writing papers, honestly, okay, um, you need to separate the tasks of what you want to say and how you're going to say it. The worst thing you can do is try to write a paper just from scratch, sitting down and just writing the paper. That's terrible because these are two different tasks. There is the logical part of your brain, and then there is the creative part of your brain. And being creative doesn't mean like being like artsy and colorful and having all this great language. Creative means literally taking something that didn't exist and now putting it into existence. That's creative art. Okay. Math people always say things like math people aren't creative. That's not true. Math people create, especially like our computer people create codes and they create websites. This is creative. Whether it's not arty, but it is going from something that was not there to something that is there. Engineers are creative because they're going from something that didn't exist and now they're building it. That's still creativity. Carpenters are people who are going from nothing to now making something with wood. Yes, they're not painting, they're not listening to, I don't know, the Grateful Dead and tripping and painting these great portraits of things. No, but they're building. That's still creativity. When you're writing a paper, you can't, it's very difficult and messy to try to both come up with what you want to say and then actually how to say it. So we separate those tasks. The outline is you laying out everything you want to say in your essay and formatting it in a way that flows. All right. This is all logic. This is the logical part of your brain. Okay. This is a logical task. All right. That's flowing. And so you can do it again, you just do it in chunks. You can do it, first you're just focused on this first part. Focus on this. Okay. Find a source that addresses the critical lens. All right. And that source, what's a good quote that says something about that critical lens? Okay. So now what's a quote from my short story that I want to include that supports this quote? Okay. Everything is in relation to each other. All right. So so this is laying out the flow of your paper. Next week, when we go over transitioning from your outline to an essay, we're going to look at how you just take this information and how do you now stitch it all together in complete sentences so you have a unified paragraph. And we will look at this section. How do you take what you've already laid out? This is all the critical information that you need to say. This is all the information that you need in your paper. Now, how do you stitch it together with complete sentences to form a unified paragraph? All right. How do you take this? This is everything you need for this paragraph. How do you then, you know, stitch it together? All right. So, in your words, there are two different tasks. The outline organizes your ideas. The essay part is now working on how do I take all this information and put it in a well-written paper. Okay. But you already know what you want to say. Now you're just focused on how to say it. All right. So the outline is really important. Don't half-ass the outline. Okay. The outline is actually the most difficult logical part of your essay. But once you get that down, then we can get into the creative aspect of creating an essay from that and putting it all together. All right. So these are very two important critical tasks for your paper. Okay. And the outline is very important. So make sure you create a good, substantial outline. All right. That was a lot. Oh, you can't see my face. The moneymaker. I hope it was helpful. I hope I didn't bore you to death. Okay. And let me know if you have any questions. I was going to go over the answers to the quiz, but we ran out of time, and I don't want to, bore you. So maybe this Friday's live lecture, we can go over quiz. Okay. All right. Check out later. See ya. Have a good week. Bye.